Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the OneKloudX session for NetSuite for Manufacturing. It's a 1 hour jam-packed full of NetSuite manufacturing, particularly around the advanced manufacturing solution. So there's a bit of a presentation up front just to walk us through who we are and a little bit about the solution, and then I'll jump straight into the actual product and go through it. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get started. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join this session of ours, which is around the manufacturing solution that NetSuite has. A bit of a welcome to start with the housekeeping. We'll keep this pretty short and concise and sweet to the point. Please use the facilities that are in Demio to be able to ask questions on the fly. You'll see on the right-hand corner of your actual page, there's a chat there. So ask any questions as you like, and I'll be sure to answer them. So first part is to take you through NetSuite. I'm not sure if any of you have seen it before, so I'll do a very high-level walkthrough of the UI, walk you through how you can easily set up your dashboards and your KPIs for a particular role, and then I'll jump into the work order planning side of it, scheduling, how orders are released to the shop floor, and then take you through the shop floor process of an actual shop floor operator based on their particular operation that they work for in a particular work center to enter their start at a particular time on that operation that then gets captured into the actual work order in NetSuite, so you can capture the true cost of labor, inclusive of the actual materials that you're using throughout the actual operation. And then I'll take you through the actual app and then any questions towards the end. So a bit about me. I've been in ERP for a long time. I'm too scared to even say how long. It says 20 plus years here, but I think it's more than that now. Implemented ERP both locally, internationally, whether it's on the client side, on the vendor side, project management or consulting. I've done it all, and then started this company of OneKloudX a few years ago to support organizations who are intending to move to the cloud. One of our areas that we love to look at and are pitching towards is the manufacturing and distribution space. And we're probably one of the only NetSuite partners out there that actually does understand the advanced manufacturing solution, which I will show you today. I think this kind of goes into a bit more about what we help our clients achieve. And for us, it's about having the right data at the right time, the right person in the right format. And then we kind of connect the right solutions for that for each and every client. As you know, there's a few actual solutions we work with. Obviously, there's NetSuite, which we're a partner of, a solution provider of. I think we're now up to probably those 4 years, grown in nearly 50 odd clients now in that period of time of growth. And then we're lining ourselves with some best of breed solutions that complement either NetSuite or Salesforce and the Elmo product. So one of those is the EFT Tool solution. We had a webinar on that probably a few months ago, so take a look. Pretty cool product, especially with the amount of cyber out there today. Demand-driven technologies is a demand planning solution. Then there's also TTS POS that's built on a NetSuite product that manages point of sale. Fast Forward that does the AP automation of NetSuite. This is also inbuilt in the actual product. They've now just rebranded and called themselves Zone and Code. So they're the NetSuite OCR solution that takes all the supplier bills and converts them into supplier invoices in NetSuite, goes through the approval process, and then we're Internet Cloud Partners and Soligo from integration, and Deputy if you like to do time and attendance, and payment gateways like Easy Collect. So for those who don't know NetSuite, it was one of the first solutions born in the actual, I think they started coding back in the late 90s, and cloud was just a fad in the same way as blockchain. A lot of people talk about blockchain today, but then it actually transpired into being an ERP fully-fledged that now is, has come a long way in the many years that it's been there. Functionality has been built and continues to be built. One version of the truth for all clients, with 31,000 clients globally using the actual product. Just in the last 12 months alone, 4,500 clients have signed up to NetSuite. And just from our own perspective, we're implementing, I think, 8 or 9 implementations at the moment, just ourselves, coupled with the customers we support. Predominantly, it's well suited for manufacturers, distributors, and service companies, project-based organizations, and it's one source of truth that pretty much manages the whole solution. So there's no integration between modules. It's all pretty much connected in the actual solution. So if we look at NetSuite from an actual functionality standpoint and core module standpoint, your customers, your orders, your financials, whether it's one subsidiary, 10 subsidiaries consolidated, coupled with the revenue management, side of things is all within the core solution. And when I say core solution, everything feeds off that area of those elements. So whether it's ERP in terms of manufacturing, whether it's in terms of inventory management, whether it's batch control, serialized inventory, whether it's batch control of expiry dates, if you're in the food space, whatever it may be, that's pretty much handled in the actual ERP component of the solution. So there isn't any need for integrations to push financials through when you are receiving a purchase order in terms of cost of goods, as an example, or when you're invoicing an actual client. It hits the GL impacts of that transaction immediately, and therefore is visible in your financial statements as you're actually transacting. So everything is in real time, and that's one of the value propositions of the actual. And then obviously, if you also incorporate a fair bit of project work, which I know a lot of manufacturers do, especially in the infrastructure space, where they're actually building specific products and custom solutions for their customers, managing products and being able to capture work orders against a project, capture purchases against a project, whether it's through SolidWorks or a CAD solution that you're pushing through all the items that you need to procure into an actual purchase order that then gets connected to a project record, and therefore work orders are created from that in order to make what you need to make throughout the actual operational process is all captured and seamlessly connected throughout the whole solution. So that's one of the great things with NetSuite. It's just not work orders that you're making to stock or work orders that you're making to order. It's actually work orders as well that you're connecting to actual projects, as well as connecting other transactions to those projects that enables you to look at a P&L for that project and say, okay, what's the cost, what's the revenue, how much we're making, labor cost, material costs, any other expenses and purchases that you're incorporating to the process, coupled with time and the like as well. So that's the core element of the solution in terms of the modules. Then on the outer ring is where you actually get the platform components that are built into the solution, which we call the Suite Cloud platform. So there's the Suite Analytics solution, which is like the BI solution of inbuilt within NetSuite, enables you to build pivot tables and the like, and graphical bits of representation of data. You've got your Suite Talk, which is your APIs that can connect to material handling solutions or connect to other solutions out there that are best of breed into NetSuite using either REST API or SOAP. And then you've got scripting for any automations that you may want to build as well. And then there's a whole workflow capability element within NetSuite as well that automates a lot of the process within the solution. And then Suite Builder is an element around building components of your own solution that you want for your client, your actual solution. And then within that, you get your individual roles, KPIs, dashboards, workflows, and those are actually inherent for each and every person in the organization. So when I show you NetSuite today and walk you through it, you'll see that I'm logged in as a particular email address and a particular password that I've entered, and then I get my roles that are inherent as part of that actual login that has its own KPIs and its dashboards depending on who I am in the organization based on that role. And then pretty much the workflows of how the automation element happens, coupled with the forms in terms of what I can see or cannot see, incorporating what fields that are visible on those forms is all part of the actual solution. And then the other great thing about it is NetSuite's built this templated solution that I'll talk a little bit about at the moment called the Manufacturing Suite Success Solution. So this Manufacturing Suite Success Solution has been built over thousands of implementations of NetSuite globally in this particular sector, where they've templated a solution and then created individual roles and dashboards and capabilities for the manufacturing space. They've got a dedicated team at NetSuite that actually manages the Suite Success Solution and continues to add more and more pre-templated functionality into the solution. So what comes with it is obviously your financials, your CRM element as well, your orders, your project management, coupled with your resource management, your project and your accounting components. And then you've got your work orders, your assembly management, your work in progress, your WIP and routing elements as well, your operational management, coupled with any cases and returns that you manage as well in the solution. So these are some of the pre-configured roles that come with NetSuite in terms of the Suite Success Edition. So these are the ones that I'll show you today. These are all pre-templated. So as a senior exec, they get their own dashboard and their own visibility into the business and what's important to them, CFO, and the like, supply chain manager, production manager, and each one of them is able to do what they're being provided and access to do. So from a very high level capability snapshot perspective, you've got your record to report, which is the financials management solution of NetSuite that is connected to every aspect of the actual product, right? Whether it's marketing, whether it's item management, whether it's production management, whether it's contract management. So if you outsource manufacturing to third parties, the whole process around the purchasing and the creation of those purchase orders for that subcontracting connected back to work orders is all part of the actual solution. And then how you actually procure the inventory with its MRP process, coupled with the order to cash component, as well as to how you're actually selling the product, whether you're selling it ex stock or whether you're selling it make to order, or whether you're actually incorporating the sales into projects. And then you, on top of that, incorporate the support management side of things as well. So there's a fully fledged case management solution in NetSuite that manages any particular cases that may come from a customer that you can manage, whether you incorporate warranty into that, repairs into that as well. So without further ado, I'll jump into NetSuite, and I've actually logged in at the moment as the operations manager. So over here, you'll see, and this is a little bit of a walkthrough I'll show you just to get a bit of a feel for the UI and how you can navigate across the NetSuite solution. So at the moment, I'm logged in as my default role, which is the operations manager role. And as part of that role, this is the actual home dashboard that you can see, right? Hence why that little home there is like a darker purple. The UI is fully configurable to the user's likings. So for instance, the colors, the font, the sizing, the whole thing is user specific. And then you've got this little bits of information across the actual page, which we call portlets. So every one of these boxes is an individual portlet that you can either click on it, minimize, maximize, move around from one area to the other to give you that level of information. So everyone is still seeing the presentation. Sorry about that. Here I am, NetSuite screen, logged in as the operations manager. You can see the actual default role that I'm logged into. Every one of these actual roles has its own inherent dashboards, view, and the rest in terms of what that user can and cannot do in that particular role. So in this operations manager role, I can see everything pertaining to what I need to see for that role, whether it's reminders. So for instance, the operations manager is the production manager. They can see what orders there are that are past due, that they can drill into. They can see the particular work orders that have been released. They can see 4 new work orders that are currently planned but haven't been released, coupled with if they're make to order or make to stock, depending on if there's customers on those as well. And they can click and go back to the home dashboard, and they're basically in the home dashboard again. There's particular tiles that we've actually created. So for instance, if you want to create a new work order or show what late work orders are there, take a look at bill of materials of products and the rest. And then I've incorporated some particular views in the actual dashboard. So for instance, particular projects that we're working on around building some camper vans, looking at the actual planned work orders that we've got for building some particular drinking fountains. And then I've got some individual production information around number of orders that were placed today, this week, this month. And you can change any one of those as well and set up and then change the actual KPI scorecards to be something different if you want to. And you've got KPIs as well. So every one of these roles that you have up here has its own inherent visibility. But the great thing about it as well is every one of these individual components where you have your individual drop downs for access, whenever you click on the top of the menu element, which is what we call the center, you also get your individual dashboards for every one of these that are pre-built in NetSuite. So if, as an operations production manager, you want to have dashboards for shipping or receiving and taking a look at KPIs for receiving in terms of what purchase orders and the vendor performance are for your organization. You can click on inventory and you can take a look at the inventory snapshot of monthly inventory trends, inventory statuses based on the filters that have been created, but you can also expand and extend on it as well. So from the dashboard, I can create my own view. I can go, okay, let's take a look at all the inventory and the reorder points and the on-hand, the committed quantities, and then I can click these 2 little elements and it's actually minimized it as well. So every one of these you can see, you can expand, you can contract, and then you can just go through every one of these and manage your individual dashboards and roles accordingly. Right, compared to if I jump into a sales role, you'll see that the salesperson has a totally different role as to what they can do in the organization. So they'll have different reminders, different tiles, different information, different elements that are pertaining to their actual role. So if I go back and jump back into the operations manager role, let me see if there's any questions before I come back. No, all good. Thank you. So back to this role. Now, the thing is, what I wanted to walk through is specifically around work orders and the planning of those individual work orders. So at the moment, there's these particular planned work orders, and these individual work orders pertain to making an actual product. Now, they could either come from MRP, where the solution is generating the particular work orders that you need to manufacture based on the demand of the finished products, or it can actually be driven from your make to order function, where sales orders are actually creating your work orders. So with regards to that, we were just to jump into one of them, work order 146. You'll be able to see that the actual work order is planned. It relates to this particular subsidiary that pertains to this particular product. So if you highlight over the product, gives you information on it. But also you can jump in and take a look at the actual product as well and have imagery on the product. You can see how it's actually stocked and managed. You can manage it in terms of how you're classifying the actual product. But then down here is where all the intelligence around the manufacturing is kept. Right? So the bill of materials will contain the actual revisions, which are effectively the recipe in terms of what actually goes into the making of the product, i.e. the actual bill of materials and the components, right? So these are the actual bill of materials. And then you can actually have sub-assemblies as well connected to it. So you can have nestings of bill of materials connected to other assembly items as well, and have the solution plan out what you need to manufacture based on the sequencing and the finished product demand. And then the component yield, how much you actually require to make a quantity of that actual product. So if I come back here again, and then on top of that, you actually manage your routing. So this is where you're managing what are the routing steps that you're using in order to manufacture this product. So in this example of making an actual drinking fountain at that particular location, we have two operations. So there's one called the weld operation, where we're actually doing all the welding, and we usually need 4 machines to do it, where they're cutting and sheet metaling the actual product, coupled with 4 resources that are based on using a cost template, and these are the actual start and run times for those particular routings. And then you can define particular components that can be added to every one of those operations. So for instance, an aluminium may be part of the welding or the assemble element. So you define those, which therefore comes out in relation to knowing when you're at the shop floor side and people are actually needing to pick products to use as part of the manufacturing process. So then they're actually consuming those bill of materials according to the correct operation, and therefore entering their time against that operation as well. So you're capturing the actual materials you're using for each operation, coupled with the time you're spending at that actual operation as well. So just the very high level element around the assembly side of things. And then as part of the actual work order, this is an actual manufacturing routing work order, which is what I showed you, which I went into the drinking fountain that had 2 operations, and we're making a quantity of 1, and we've so far made 0 of it, and we've scrapped none, and we're actually planning and starting to make this product on the 13th of September. You can connect the actual work order to a project or to a customer, which makes it either a project-related work order or a make-to-order related work order. And then you can classify it as well. So therefore, you can classify the actual costs and the actual materials in relation to departments and classes and different segments as well. So what's defaulted in here is the actual items that come from the item record that I've just shown you, as well as shows you what's available and what's on hand, and also where are you actually sourcing the stock. So you can be sourcing the stock either from stock, or you can be sourcing the stock in terms of purchase. So for instance, you stock the product, you purchase it. So when there's demand on that actual item for purchase and there's none in stock, then the solution of NetSuite will suggest what you need to purchase in order to manufacture the stock, incorporating the lead times, and then they're all fed back into the actual start and end date of the actual work order. Or you can actually have it as a sub-assembly, as a make-to-order as well. So you may have the dispenser being a manufactured item that will have its own set of bill of materials and components. The operations, like I mentioned earlier, drives how we're planning in terms of the actual and executing in terms of the actual operations that it needs to go through. And it calculates the actual planned time in relation to each one of those operations that incorporates the machine time and the estimated labor time. If you, for some reason, need to have QA as part of the process as well, NetSuite has a full QA solution connected to it as part of it, that you can build a proper queue process of how it needs to go through the actual QA process for each and every one of those operations as well. And so I keep going through. When actuals come through, you'll get the actual information in terms of the setup, the runtime, any variances. Communications is where you're actually adding activities. So for instance, you may want to create a new task to an actual person in your company or externally, or send them an actual email where you're communicating on this particular work order record. Related records just shows you all the individual builds, that completions or assembly builds that are part of the product. So when you're actually making this product, and when you're making it is when it actually gets moved from planned status to a release status, then you get additional functions up there as well to complete the completions as well, if you want to complete the work order outside of the actual shop floor app, if you need to. And then the other elements are production data that shows you the actual production results and any production loss or any completions or downtime or labor that have gone into it, or any operational batches that are made within every one of those operations. So you can have sub-products that get made as part of each of the operations as well. All right, so just very, very high level on the work order. And then you've got this drag and drop capability up there as well, that you can drag and drop files, and it stores those files in the actual filing cabinet of NetSuite. So NetSuite has its own file repository backend as well, which can capture files against any single transaction in NetSuite. So I've shown you the bill of materials. The next part I want to take you through is the actual capacity planning of NetSuite. So this is where you're actually planning your resources and on your machine time for the relevant operations. So if we jump into the capacity planning reports and choose one of the capacity plans that I created earlier, and show that particular report. So let's do it by, so you can either do it by production summary, which will show you for the total period that you're running it for, or you can have it split up by individual periods. So I remember when I ran it by weeks, so you can either do weeks or months in the capacity planning solution. So if we display the report, what it will show you is for each and every operation, all right? In this case, we've broken up by weeks for a particular location based on a particular horizon. You can see the actual employees that you've got planned, the actual labor hours that are going into it, incorporating the available time, the utilization, and the rest incorporating whatever work orders are in the actual solution based on what's been reviewed and released. So it gives you a bit of a snapshot in terms of being able to look at what your actual utilization is for each and every work center or for each and every operation in your business. So that's the capacity planning side of it from a high level standpoint. And the next part is, once you've done that, you have the ability to go in and release your actual work orders. So when you're releasing your work orders, you're releasing them in that you can either review them and say, okay, show me what the schedule looks like. That incorporates all the run times and across every operation. And I'll show you how that looks like in a sec. So if you incorporate, show me all the individual work orders for that Lonsdale, South Australia location. We'll start the horizon on the 12th of this month for this whole week. And we want to be showing all the planned orders, and we're sorting it by actual start date, then by schedule code or by planning code quantity. So you have the ability to sort the list once it's shown here in any one of these actual elements. So when I actually list all the individual work orders, it's going to show me all the individual work orders that are either both released and planned. If I just want to show the planned ones and not the released because they're already released, I can just change that function around the released orders to do not display, and it'll show me all the actual work orders that are in a planned status. And then pretty much the sequencing of how you're seeing the work orders here is based on how you've sorted these two elements here. So when you want to actually check and say, okay, show me, if I mark all, it's going to sequence them based on how it's sorted. And then I have the ability to view the actual schedule. So these 4 particular work orders to making the same drinking fountain for these particular quantities based on these start dates, right? I can actually release the schedule. And this actually runs a job in the background where it's actually now calculating, okay, for each and every one of those operations, coupled with the runtime, coupled with the actual labor time, how is the actual scheduling looking like in a Gantt chart format? So if I just refresh, it's still running in the background. All right, I'll come back to that in a sec once it's still loading. And then once you've actually released it or you've viewed it, then you can go in and actually release those work orders. So you can actually go in and release the work orders. And what happens then, it actually moves the actual status from plan to release. That enables you to print a shop floor document that looks something like this when you're printing it out. So you just go in, list your work orders, print out your shop floor documents. And then the shop floor document, once it's printed out, looks something like this. So this is one that I did earlier, where it actually shows the work order, the assembly item, the actual product, including UPC code, and then you've got your barcodes, right? So if you had a workstation on your shop floor that had a barcode scanner connected to it, you could actually scan the work order, scan the operation. If these particular bill of materials were connected to the operation, you'd be able to see those as well. So then you can scan the actual product and say, okay, how many were you using? And then also I'm using 2 of them or 1 of them, and then you can end up completing it. And then you can move to the next operation once you've done that. And I'll show you how we do that from a time perspective on the shop floor app. And you have therefore the next operation, which is the cutting work area, which has an estimate runtime of 0.77. The expected start date from the calculation based on the runtimes is for the 12th at 11:30. And we're finishing at 12:14, and the setup time's 4 minutes. So it's all there, ready to be scanned. Let me just come back to this now. Hopefully this is finished. So here it is here. So when I actually went and released these previewed the schedule, the solution came back and actually said, okay, this is what it now looks like in terms of the individual work orders, coupled with the relevant operation, and therefore when the expected start and end time are for every one of these, right? So at the moment we're looking at this at a day and week schedule, but we can actually go down to the actual hour view as well. So if I just refresh and display it, it will show me now for the particular hour for every single work order, that I can also adjust accordingly the actual size of when it starts and when it ends as well. That then once I've done with this, I can go and actually release those work orders based on the actual preview schedule that I've updated. The other thing is I'm just looking at the moment by grouping it by work order, hence why you can see all the operations are grouped by work order, but we can also group it by asset. So if there's particular assets that you're using for each and every operation, whether it's a welder or whether it's a heavy duty wrench or whatever it is, you can end up grouping it together by actual asset as well and looking at the total amount that's used in the asset. So you can see we're starting at 11 a.m., finishing at 5 o'clock, because that's the actual work center calendar. And then they'll pull the rest of the actual ones in terms of the operations the other days as well. If I look at it by work center as well, I can view it that way also. So I can look at it many ways, whether it's by work center, whether it's by work order, whether it's by asset in a graphical representation, but I can also look at it by an actual list representation as well. So once we've done with that and we're saying, yep, we're happy with it, we want to proceed, what we can do next is we actually release the individual work orders. So for instance, if we want to release all of them and we release the work orders, like I mentioned, the actual job will run now to release those actual work orders from a planned status to a release status. That then goes to the shop floor to actually therefore print it out like I showed you over here. So from an actual execution standpoint, we've built this particular shop floor app within NetSuite using the NetSuite solution that enables shop floor people to come to a workstation, scan the individual elements here, work order, operation, and therefore be able to capture their relevant time for their employees. So if they scan their employee code, which NetSuite has its own employee record that has an employee code tied to it, the relevant work order, and then the operation, and you submit that, it will take you actually into the shop floor app. And it will show you for that particular work order what the individual operations are for that particular work order. So in this example, you've got your design, your production, and QA, and therefore the start and end times of those. So now as an operator, it actually knows based on my employee, based on the allocation, that this work order hasn't been started yet. So when I actually start the timer, it's actually going to start it for that particular operation 10. So now this is in the background capturing all the time. And you can log out if you want to. So if I hit home again and come out, it's still going to be capturing the actual time for me being Robert Jurcec, the employee for that particular product where I'm making a face mask. And then if I pause the time, right, in this example is where I'm now, there's actual downtime, right? So for some reason there's downtime, I need to go and calibrate something, I might need to do something, I might need to fix the machine, and then the relevant downtime is being captured on that work order record for that particular operation. Now you can restart the timer as well, and now we'll restart again and capture timing against me. Otherwise, if I stop the timer or finish the task, it would actually take me to the actual completion screen and say, based on the options, this is what I'm actually completing, and I'm submitting it, and therefore take me back and now completes that actual operation for that particular work order. All right, so this is the actual shop floor app, and then all that information gets captured against the relevant work order. And if I go into the work order, it all captures the information as a work order assembly or a completion, that then all that information is therefore captured in the relevant components relating to the production results, the production labor, any downtime or production loss is all captured based on what comes back from that app. So I hope that all makes sense. And then the lovely part of it is the reporting element of it as well. So for instance, NetSuite has a fair bit of reporting when it comes to either planning reports, right? So whether you're planning material shortages or planning what materials need to be issued, or you're planning an actual daily plan, right? In terms of what you're planning for, in terms of the work orders that you need to manufacture for this. So we can look at it also, just say, show me what you want to plan for today. And it's going to show me whatever work orders there are for today to be planned based on the relevant operations for those work orders. So you can see for 142, the operation 20 is to assemble, must have been the previous day, would have been for probably operation 10. And then you've got your assembly for 143, and then your weld for 142. Shows you the status, shows you the actual planned quantities you need to make, the units per hour on average for that particular operation, what the estimated planned start time, the total machine hours, and the rest all in that particular report. And then you can drill down to the actual record as well if you want. So that's just a daily plan report. And then you have also the elements around looking at it from a operational scorecard perspective in terms of measuring how well things are getting tracked in terms of dispatch. And then your manufacturing reports is where you're actually capturing your downtime, your production loss, your labor reports, any operational reports as well, whether it's to the work order level, employee level, and the like. So if we just jump into the operational report and we just look at it for day being today, that for work order 147 that I processed earlier, that I therefore ended up for operation 10 weld, I ended up putting in some runtime in terms of machine time that I spent on that operation. And then for operation 20, I could see that there was 5 hours that was entered, but I'm actually looking at this from an actual operating or a detailed level. If I want to go and look at it from an actual resource level, I can go into the resource view, in the employee view, and look at it from that perspective as well. So if we just choose for a particular day, being today, nonetheless, today to the end of the month, I can see that for Owen, being me in this example, I ended up spending 5 hours on that 20 operation, which was entered, and that particular shop floor app that I showed you. So all the information is captured in NetSuite, and you have full visibility in this report, and therefore captures all the actual cost as well on that work order, as well as completion record. So you can drill straight down into the actual underlying record and take a look at the detail. So we went through, sorry, I'm just jumping around here. So we went through NetSuite Tour. I took you through the actual planning element, the scheduling, and the shop floor processing side. I've flown through it, giving you a bit of a view as well. Does anyone have any questions in what I've shown you? Would you like me to focus on maybe some other area? I covered pretty much from a high level standpoint what I wanted to cover today. Any questions? No? Feel free to reach out to me or reach out to us. If you want a more specific demo for your specific needs, I can set something up as well. And yeah, so whether it's taking you through the setup of how I can set up your operations for your business, showing you how it would operate, set up the individual shop floor app as well to show you how that would work in your business, coupled with the financial elements as well, because obviously there's the financial components that sit behind it. Let me know. Okay. Thank you for your time, everyone. I appreciate your attendance, and yeah, please feel free to reach out, and I hope you found value in this, and hopefully we get to speak soon. Thank you very much.